Echoes of the Blind Pharaoh, Part 1. Chapter 1, The Map That Bled. The scroll came to Darek Amun wrapped in linen, sealed and wax-stamped with a scarab turned backward, a symbol known in only two circles, royal assassins and the cursed scribes of Set. He should have burned it. Instead, he opened it under a half-broken moon, inside the cramped study of a spice merchant who owed him a favor and a bottle of date wine. The parchment crackled as it unfurled, ancient ink flaking like old blood. It wasn't just a map, it was a palimpsest, a scroll rewritten over something older. Far older. Darek lit a flame beneath the sheet. The top layer faded. And what emerged underneath made his breath catch. A layout of a city that didn't exist anymore, with a single word etched over the heart of it in red. Ibisutek. The heart of Set. He had heard the name once, whispered by a delirious tomb robber who swore he'd seen a city swallowed by the earth, its ruler still seated on a throne of bone. A place even the gods wouldn't look upon. According to this map, it was real. A soft tap at the window jolted Darek back. He slipped the scroll into a hidden sleeve as the shutters creaked open. Layla. Her expression said everything. They found the Brotherhood's vault outside Abydos, she whispered. Empty. But not abandoned. Darek stood. Any survivors? Only one. She hesitated. He asked for you by name. The man lay wrapped in bandages, face sunburnt and pale. His eyes were sewn shut. Not stitched. Branded. The mark on his forehead was unmistakable, the eye of Horus struck through with a serpent's fang. Who did this to you? Darek asked. The man coughed blood and grinned with cracked lips. The Blind Pharaoh remembers. Then he died. That night, Darek stood alone under the stars outside Probastet, the scroll's map inked into his memory. The compass was silent. The medallion had not glowed in weeks. But something was stirring again, something deeper. If Ibisutek was truly real. If the Blind Pharaoh still lingered in the shadows of history. Then the compass hadn't pointed to the past. It had pointed to what comes next. Chapter 2, The Seal Beneath the Sand. The desert was never quiet. Even in the dead of night, the sands whispered ancient things, grains shifting over bone, wind brushing against half-buried stone like fingers turning forgotten pages. Darek Amun crouched at the base of a crescent-shaped dune, the cold seeping through his robes. Above him, the stars blinked warily, as if watching for what he might uncover. They had followed the map for 2 days across territory that no caravan would willingly cross. This place, an arid scar between Probastet and the ruins of Abydos, was known to the Bedouin as Tath al-Ramel, the sand that hears. The scroll had led them here. Or rather, the map beneath the scroll. The original one. A spiral etched in red, centered on nothing. No ruins. No stone. Just sand. And yet. Darek's hand scraped something beneath the surface. Not rock. Copper. Layla. Darek called. Bring the light. She knelt beside him, torch in hand, eyes narrowed as the glow hit the exposed shape. It wasn't just a fragment. It was a seal, a perfectly circular plate of copper about a meter wide, covered in glyphs that pulsed faintly in the firelight, lines and loops that weren't written in any language found in temple archives. The symbols didn't read like prayers or warnings. They read like locks. I've never seen writing like this, Layla murmured. You have, Darek said quietly. You just didn't know what you were looking at. He pointed to the outer ring. It's in the compass. Impossible, she whispered. Not if the compass was made to find this. Rafi joined them, brushing dust off his hands. No visible entry point. No creases, no hinges. You sure this isn't just some ceremonial cap? Darek ignored him. He ran his fingers along the ring until he found a groove, subtle, almost natural. He pulled the blue lotus pendant from around his neck, the chain glinting in the torchlight. The compass medallion still hung beside it. He held the fused talisman near the seal. The symbols flared. With a deep, mechanical groan, the sand around them began to sink, spiraling into itself as if the desert had suddenly remembered it was hollow. "Move back!" Darek shouted, grabbing Layla's arm as the dune collapsed into a funnel of shadow. And then, silence. A circular pit, 10 meters wide, had opened where the dune once stood. At its center, a spiral staircase of obsidian and limestone led downward into blackness. Carved above the first step, in letters barely legible. "He who sees without eyes knows all." They descended slowly, torches raised high. The walls were smooth, glistening faintly in the flickering light. Every 10 steps, a small alcove appeared in the wall, each one containing a mask. Not ceremonial. Functional. Each was different: falcon, jackal, ibis, lion. All carved with extreme precision, all sealed shut, eyeholes filled in with obsidian. And each bore a name. Layla stopped at one and read it aloud. Hikasenub. Scribe of air. Branded for witnessing the forbidden dream. Rafi's voice came out low. "These aren't decorations. They're the names of people who saw something." "No," Darek said, brow furrowed. "They're the ones who saw him." At the base of the spiral stair, a massive doorway waited. The arch was made of polished ivory, and the threshold was engraved with overlapping symbols, eye after eye, each struck through with a single diagonal line. The mark of the Blind Pharaoh. At the center of the door was a single impression, serpent-shaped, coiled, with a slot in the center. The compass medallion fit perfectly. Layla hesitated. "Are we sure we want to open this?" "No," Darek said. "But if he's waking up, if the Brotherhood tried and failed." He pressed the medallion in. The seal turned. The door clicked once. Then swung open with a gust of cold, stale air, and the faint sound of breathing. Not theirs. Chapter 3, The Throne That Was Never Empty. The air behind the door wasn't just stale, it was thick. Weighted. Like memory had turned solid. As Darek stepped through the arched threshold, the torchlight in his hand flickered violently, then steadied, casting golden ripples along the walls of a chamber that had not seen light in thousands of years. The space beyond was massive, a sunken hall carved directly into the living rock, wide as a temple courtyard but low-ceilinged, the weight of the mountain above pressing down on every breath. Pillars lined the outer walls, each one carved with human figures bent at unnatural angles, heads bowed in eternal reverence. But the center of the chamber was empty, deliberately so. Empty except for the throne. It sat atop a short dais, for-worn steps leading to a seat that was not golden, not jewel-encrusted. It was stone. Black. Rough. Built to endure, not to dazzle. But the carvings on the floor around it, they told a different story. Layla was the first to notice. She dropped to one knee, brushing sand from a faint mosaic beneath their feet. Her voice trembled as she read the ancient script. "The king who watched the world die." Rafi circled the room slowly, torch sweeping side to side. "But where is he? Where's the tomb? The coffin? Anything?" Darek didn't answer. Because he already knew. He approached the throne, each step echoing with unnatural clarity. It wasn't just a chair. It was a seal. A capstone. Every line, every carving, every bloodstain etched into the stone told the same story: this is not where he rests. This is where he rules. Darek knelt in front of the throne. A whisper stirred the air. Not from behind. Not from within. From the stone itself. A voice like wind over sand, ancient and deliberate. "Eyes burn. Words fail. You kneel where none should remember. Derek's skin prickled. He turned to Layla. Did you hear that? She looked confused. Hear what? Only Darek had heard it. Because only he was listening with the compass. He stood slowly and took the medallion from his chest. As he approached the throne, the eyes of the bowed figures carved into the pillars began to glow faintly, one by one, until all of them illuminated the chamber in a pale, sickly green. At the base of the throne, a hidden compartment slid open. Inside, resting in a velvet-lined recess, was a second compass. But this one was broken, its serpent coils cracked, the central stone dull and webbed with fissures. Layla gasped. Is that the original? Darek whispered. The one used to seal the throne. Rafi stepped closer. If it's broken, does that mean? Layla finished the thought. The seal was never complete. The whisper came again, clearer this time, and this time, everyone heard it. I was blind so the world could forget. But the world forgot too much. The torches went out. The green glow remained. And the throne breathed. A low, hissing exhale, not air, but pressure. Release. As though something far beneath the surface had just loosened its chains. Darek didn't move. Because suddenly, he understood. This throne wasn't made to honor him, he said. Layla stepped back. What, then? He turned, face pale. It was built to sit on top of him. The stone beneath the throne cracked with a slow groan, like old teeth grinding together. A skeletal hand, wrapped in tattered linen, emerged from the shadow below. The figure that followed moved not like the dead, nor like the living, but like a memory that had remembered how to walk. The blind pharaoh had no eyes. But he looked directly at Darek. And smiled. Chapter 4, The Pharaoh's Smile. The throne room was no longer silent. That smile, etched into the withered, lipless face of a man who had not drawn breath in over a millennium, split the veil between the past and the present. The blind pharaoh had risen. And the chamber remembered. He stood tall, impossibly so, his spine stretched in unnatural segments beneath the weight of centuries. His arms, wrapped in rotting linen and inscribed with faded glyphs, hung like ceremonial blades at his sides. He wore no crown. No golden pectoral. No scepter. Only a collar of black stone, smooth and reflective, set with a single carved eye. The sockets of his skull were hollow, burned clean, but they glowed faintly, filled with something that moved like vapor and pulsed like memory. Rafi stepped back instinctively, torch raised. That's not possible. It's not undeath, Layla murmured, her voice shaking. It's something older. He's animated by knowledge. By what he remembers. Darek said nothing. He couldn't. The blind pharaoh's unseen gaze was locked on him. The pharaoh did not speak with sound. His jaw did not move. His voice landed directly into the minds of the living, coiled like smoke and hot iron. Son of the builder, you bear the lotus. You wear the compass not made for your kind. You have opened what was sealed by blood and silence. And now, you will remember with me. Derek's body jerked as if struck. His vision blurred. And in a single, blinding moment, he was no longer in the chamber. The throne room vanished. Darek stood in a sunlit courtyard, vibrant with gold and red banners, surrounded by chanting priests. A young man, himself, but not, knelt at the feet of a figure in obsidian robes. It was the pharaoh, but younger. Alive. Eyes bandaged with silk. He cannot see, a voice whispered behind him. He sees too much. Then, fire. The city burned around him. Statues melted. Temples cracked. A hole in the sky opened like a torn veil. People screamed, but the pharaoh remained still. Watching, even without eyes. They erased his name to spare the gods. They erased their gods to spare themselves. Darek gasped as the vision ended. He was back in the present, on the floor of the chamber, knees against cold stone. His nose was bleeding. Layla knelt beside him. You were gone for over a minute. What did you see? Darek stared at the blind pharaoh, who had not moved. His memory, he rasped. He gave it to me. Rafi had his blade drawn, though it shook in his grip. Can we kill him? Or, whatever he is? Darek slowly shook his head. No. He's not alive. He's not undead. He's an echo. A will that refused to die. He was buried not because he was evil, but because he saw what no pharaoh was meant to see. Layla's voice was barely a whisper. Then why smile? The blind pharaoh's smile widened. And the stone beneath the throne groaned again. A second figure rose. Smaller. Hooded. But this one spoke aloud, her voice cracked like dry reeds. The eye has opened. The other half must awaken. Darek turned sharply. Who are you? The hooded figure pulled back her cowl, revealing a woman, ancient beyond reckoning, her face tattooed with inked sigils that crawled as if freshly drawn. Her eyes were milky white, her teeth filed to points. I am the witness. I was buried alive to dream of this day. Layla's eyes widened. The priestess from the scroll, the one branded for speaking his name. The name they sealed behind flame and prayer. The one the gods were too afraid to hear. But he still remembers. And now, so will you. She raised a second compass, cracked, twitching with light, and placed it at the blind pharaoh's feet. And the entire temple shuddered. The pharaoh finally moved, his hand slowly lifted, pointing to Darek. Bring the compass to Ibisutek. There, we shall remember together. Then the throne split in two. The echo vanished. The witness collapsed. And the air around them felt lighter, emptied. For now. But in Darek's hand, the compass was glowing again. And in his chest, was the echo of a memory that wasn't entirely his anymore. Chapter 5, The Path of the Forgotten Builders. The dust had not yet settled when Darek Amun pressed his back against the cold stone wall of the throne chamber, breathing hard. The witness lay lifeless at the base of the dais, her outstretched hand still pointing toward the second compass, the broken one now humming with faint pulses of golden-green light. The glow intensified as Darek approached. The two compasses, his and the one placed by the witness, began to resonate in sync. Not with sound, but with vibration. A rhythm. A pulse. A heartbeat. They weren't tools anymore. They were keys. Layla crouched beside the witness's body, her face solemn. She has markings I've only ever seen once before, on the inside of the chamber walls of the shattered vault. Darek nodded slowly. The vault of teeth. Same symbology. Same language. But there's a new glyph here, she added, tracing a line near the woman's wrist. It's not a name. It's a designation. A caste. Rafi raised an eyebrow. Caste of what? Darek replied without hesitation. The Forgotten Builders. The term came from old records, tales of a guild that predated the known dynasties, builders so skilled they were whispered to have shaped temples that could move, vaults that could hide themselves from the gods. Their names had been systematically erased, their designs outlawed. Because they built things not to worship the gods, but to contain them. As the compasses pulsed together, a rumble shook the throne chamber. Rafi drew his blade instinctively, but Darek held up a hand. The wall behind the throne rotated silently, revealing a long, sloped corridor, so smooth it seemed poured, not carved. And above it, a new inscription. To those who shaped the silence, walked the path only memory recalls. They descended into the hidden passage. As they moved, torches flared to life automatically, one by one, ignited by a mechanism buried beneath the walls, still functioning after untold centuries. Not magic. Not divine intervention. Engineering. Layla murmured, they weren't just builders. They were scientists, philosophers, architects of memory. Rafi kicked a pebble down the slope. It clattered for several seconds before stopping abruptly. And what exactly did they want buried so badly they built this? Darek didn't answer. He already knew. The corridor ended in a circular vault. Unlike the previous chambers, this room was clean, preserved. Its walls were lined with reliefs, detailed like murals in a temple, but made not of stone, nor gold. Memory tiles. Each tile depicted a moment. Not mythology. History. And at the center of it all, a towering mosaic of a man standing before a city that burned under a red sky. His eyes were bandaged. His robes were dark. His throne towered behind him. Ibisutek. It was not a myth. It was a place. A real city, lost, erased, buried by those who feared what had been seen there. Darek stepped closer to the mosaic, reading the surrounding text aloud. The eye was sealed beneath stone and silence. The builders who saw it turned their tools to ash. But the king who remembered, he waited. He turned to Layla and Rafi. This is what the Brotherhood was afraid of. Not the Pharaoh. Not the compass. Memory itself. On the opposite wall was something even stranger, a map, unlike any they'd ever seen. Not geographic. Not symbolic. A map of structures. Vaults. Pathways. Machines. A network of places connected by thin gold lines, each marked with the symbol of the serpent's eye and a single word beneath it. Remember. Layla's breath caught. They didn't just build tombs. They built nodes. Each one feeding memory into the next, Darek whispered. A system. Rafi frowned. What for? Containment, Layla said, answering before Darek could. But Darek shook his head. No. Not anymore. Transmission. Near the base of the mosaic was a final tile. Unlike the others, it was blank. But as Derek's fingers brushed it, something pulsed inside him, the compasses reacted, glowing in rhythm. And then, slowly, the glyph carved itself across the tile before their eyes, as though it had been waiting for recognition. It was a word. No name. Just a command. Ibisutek awaits. Back on the surface, the desert winds howled across the dunes, but deep below, in the chamber of the forgotten builders, the path had been revealed. The location of Ibisutek. A city built of impossible memory. A pharaoh who never died, because he was never allowed to. And now Darek Amun had both the keys. He looked at his companions and said what they already feared. We're going in. Chapter 6, The Sands That Never Shifted. The maps did not agree. The satellite scans showed nothing. The caravan routes avoided the region entirely. Even the stars above seemed to shift, subtly, as if the very sky conspired to forget what lay beneath. But Darek Amun had the coordinates, drawn not from ink or data, but from memory tiles and ancient pulses hidden inside the compass of Wadjet. The path was not written on any scroll. It was written into the land itself. They called it the Sea of Stillness, a stretch of desert where the dunes never moved, where no wind touched the surface, and no storm left a mark. The Bedouin called it Gubar al-Sakina, the dust that waits. And at its heart was Ibisutek. Darek, Layla, and Rafi stood at the edge of the Sea of Stillness, their camels restless and braying. The sand here was unnatural. Perfectly smooth. Undisturbed. The same ripple patterns extended for miles in every direction, as if the wind had been frozen mid-breath. "It's wrong," Rafi muttered, scanning the horizon through a tinted lens. No tracks, no motion. Even the heat shimmer stops past the ridge. Layla consulted the compass medallion, which now pulsed faintly, the glow guiding them toward a spot just ahead, an invisible line across the sand. Darek mounted the lead camel and adjusted his scarf. "Once we cross that threshold, we're not in the world anymore. Not as we know it." Layla gave a dry laugh. "Good. I was getting tired of reality." They crossed the threshold. Nothing changed. And yet, everything did. Inside the sea of stillness, sound changed. There was no echo, no crunch of hooves. The air was still, but not silent. Beneath the sand, they could feel pressure. Like walking across a stretched drumhead. The compass led them forward, hour by hour, as the sun moved without casting proper shadows. Layla's watch stopped working. Rafi's compass spun freely. "This place is repelling modern tools," Darek muttered, watching the horizon. "Like it's holding on to its own time." Layla frowned. "Or like we're being watched by the land itself." Then she stopped. "Darek," she whispered, pointing. "The sand. Look." He turned. A ripple. Not a mirage. A physical ripple, stretching across the dunes ahead, like something massive had just passed beneath the surface. And then, the faintest sound, breathing. Rafi paled. "I don't care what's buried here, if it's still breathing, we leave." "We can't," Darek said, voice flat. "If we leave it here, it keeps dreaming. And one day, it won't need us to wake it." By dusk, they reached the place the compasses pulsed brightest, a ring of smooth stone rising from the sand, barely visible, a perfect circle, 20 meters wide, engraved with sigils almost worn smooth by time. At the center, buried under barely an inch of sand, was a seal made of black glass. As Darek uncovered it, he read the inscription. "We buried the eye. But the dream watches still." The sand around the ring began to spiral inward. The seal glowed. Layla stepped back. "It's reacting to your blood again." Darek drew the lotus pendant from his neck and placed it in the center. The moment it touched the glass, the seal cracked. The ring fell inward. And the desert opened. A staircase spiraled downward into lightless depths. As they stepped in, the walls shimmered, not gold, not stone, but memory metal, reflecting images that were not their own. A child with bandaged eyes seated on a throne. Builders carving glyphs onto their own skin. The compass being split in two, one for sealing, one for calling. Darek's voice was tight. "This place, it's not a tomb. It's a conduit. A vessel." Layla stared at the reflections. "We're not the first to come here." "No," Darek said. "But we might be the last." The stair ended in a narrow archway. Beyond it, darkness pulsed with memory. They stepped through. And Sutek, the city of the unseen, awoke. Chapter 7, The City That Buried Itself. They stepped through the arch and into the lungs of a buried god. Sutek. The city whispered its name without sound, inscribed in the walls, in the air, in the very rhythm of their hearts. The corridor before them opened into a hollow expanse beyond imagining. A vast cavern, miles across and lit by an impossible glow that came from nowhere and everywhere, soft, silver-green like moonlight on black stone. It wasn't underground. It was under history. The streets were not ruins. They were intact. Perfectly preserved. Buildings made of volcanic glass, metal-veined sandstone, and smooth obsidian rose in quiet rows, all oriented inward, toward the center of the city where a spire of translucent crystal stabbed the cavern's ceiling like a blade. It pulsed slowly, in time with the compass's glow. And the streets were wide, too wide for people. These buildings aren't for the living, Layla murmured, trailing her hand along a surface that reflected her face wrong. They're too angular. The geometry's off. No sand, Rafi noted. No erosion. This place hasn't just survived. It's resisted time. Darek stared at the spire. It wasn't meant to be rediscovered. He knelt and brushed the dustless road. Embedded in the stone were glyphs, but not for navigation or prayer. Commands. Do not remember. Do not approach. Do not kneel. As they walked deeper, the compass grew heavier in Derek's hand. The glowing stone at its center now spun slowly on its own. Every few steps, the air shimmered. Then came the whispers. Not sound. Thought. Fragmented. Overlapping. A dozen languages, all long dead. He made us blind. But not silent. Memory returns. The seal bleeds. Layla staggered. I heard a woman speak my name. There are no women here, Rafi whispered. Not anymore, Darek said grimly. He gestured to the walls. Faces had been carved into the stone, half-formed, eyes covered, mouths open in agony or awe. Some were etched into windows, others into columns, even floors. Watching. Or remembering. They reached the central avenue, a long, straight path paved in glassy black tile. On either side stood statues. Dozens of them. Tall, androgynous figures cloaked in scale-like robes, their faces covered by masks, serpent-headed, eye-slit, fanged. Their hands were outstretched toward the path, each holding small copper bowls. Darek peeked into one. Empty. But not clean. Inside was ash. Rafi flinched. Are those offerings, Layla said. Or something worse? Remains, Darek corrected. People who tried to pass through without being remembered properly. They walked the path, the spire rising ahead, impossibly tall. The deeper they moved, the more the compass pulsed, not just with light now, but with resistance. Every step felt heavier. Like something beneath the street didn't want them to continue. At the base of the spire, they found the first true warning. A wall of stone, smooth as onyx, with a single inscription. The king who never closed his eyes. The builders who tried to seal him. The dream that made itself real. Below it, a depiction. A figure seated on a throne with no eyes, raising one hand. Before him, 3 builders bowed low, bleeding from their ears. The central figure, taller, wrapped in lotus robes, was struck through the chest by a serpent of light. Darek stared at it. Layla placed a hand on his shoulder. That's you, she said quietly. No, Darek replied. It's what I might become. The structure before them now towered close, crystal, semi-transparent, alive with internal light that flickered like veins. At its base, a door made of twisted bronze and black glass, sealed shut with no handle, no hinge. But the compass in Derek's hand twisted, unraveled, until it took a new shape. Not a compass. A key. He pressed it into the recess at the door's heart. The air collapsed inward, a pressure drop like thunder on mute. The door dissolved, not opened. And within, a spiral staircase of translucent bone led downward. Do we really go in there? Rafi asked, his voice hoarse. We came to learn what they buried, Darek said. And it's not here. It's below. They descended into the heart of the city that buried itself. Toward the pharaoh who could not die. And the memory that wanted out. Chapter 8, The Pharaoh's Dream. The spiral staircase descended like a spine into the living heart of Ibisotek. Each step was translucent, humming faintly beneath their feet, as though it were responding to their presence. There were no shadows, only diffuse green light emanating from the walls themselves, soft but pulsing, like the city was breathing around them. And always, just beyond hearing, a sound like whispers inside water. Darek Amun gripped the reshaped compass in his hand. It no longer resembled a navigational tool, it had unfurled like a blooming serpent, 3 coils wrapped around a central core that throbbed with light. It was pointing downward, and inward. Rafi's voice was low, breathless. This place isn't right. The further we go, the less things make sense. That's because we're no longer in a structure, Layla murmured. We're in a mind. The stair ended in a vast chamber so smooth, so seamless, it looked like the inside of a gemstone. Dozens of thin, root-like strands of copper and crystal extended from the ceiling, gently touching the floor like tendrils. The moment they stepped inside, the strands lifted slightly, reacting to their movement. In the center of the room was a raised platform. And atop it, a slab of stone, black, vein-riddled, and humming. No body. No bones. But carved into the slab were the impressions of a man's form, head, torso, arms, legs, as if someone had once laid there, and left a memory of himself behind. On the wall behind it was a mural, the Blind Pharaoh, arms outstretched, standing between 2 cities, one on fire, one submerged. Above him, a single eye in the sky dripped what appeared to be blood onto the desert below. When the body failed, he remained, Layla read softly. When the memory faded, he remembered. The air shifted. Darek stepped onto the platform. The compass in his hand unraveled completely, flattening into a thin sheet of light, which wrapped around the form on the slab. And suddenly, the chamber vanished. Darek blinked. He was no longer in the spire. He stood in a vast, open plain beneath a sky of gold and violet. A mirror horizon stretched in every direction, reflecting stars that did not exist. Figures walked in the distance, their features blurred, their steps echoing without sound. And in front of him, seated on a black throne of spiraling glass, was the Blind Pharaoh. But here, he was whole. Alive. No bandages. His eyes glowed like twin suns, and his voice, when it came, felt like a memory dredged up from Derek's own mind. You entered my dream, bearer of the Lotus. You seek truth. But truth is shaped by memory. And memory is no longer yours alone. Darek approached slowly. Why are you still here? He asked. You should have passed on. Been buried. Forgotten. The Pharaoh smiled. I was made to forget so the world could remember something else. But the builders failed. The seal broke. And now, the world forgets itself. History is unraveling. My city remembers. I remain because I must. Unless. Darek narrowed his eyes. Unless what? Unless someone takes my place. Suddenly, Derek's skin burned. Images flooded his vision, a city drowning in sand, people weeping ink instead of tears, compasses spinning out of control, men carving memory into their own flesh to hold on to truth. He saw the builders go mad. He saw priests pluck out their own eyes to stop dreaming. He saw the Blind Pharaoh surrender his body to protect the world from what he had seen. You carry a key, the Pharaoh said. But keys open and close alike. You can reseal the gate. But you must leave your memory behind. You must become the lock. Derek's breath caught. Then. A sharp cry. He woke. Back in the chamber. Layla shaking him. Rafi shouting. The platform pulsing with light. You were gone for 5 seconds, she cried. I was there for an hour, Darek gasped, eyes wide. I saw him. I spoke to him. Rafi helped him stand. What did he want? Darek looked at the compass, now dim, fragile in his hand. He wants someone to take his place. And if we don't, this city won't stay buried. He looked toward the sealed door at the end of the chamber, beyond which, the final memory waited. He can't hold the dream back much longer. Chapter 9, The Door That Bleeds Memory. The door stood at the far end of the chamber, perfectly smooth, its surface blacker than obsidian and alive with movement. It wasn't made of stone. It was made of woven memory. As Darek, Layla, and Rafi approached, the door shimmered, ripples pulsing across it like heat waves over a mirage. Each pulse revealed brief flashes within the surface, faces contorted in anguish, eyes weeping ink, mouths moving silently in warning. And still, the compass in Derek's hand pulsed. Not faster. Not brighter. Heavier. Layla stepped forward, studying the door closely. It's not just sealed. It's aware. Rafi grimaced. That's not comforting. No, Darek said softly. It's not meant to be. He pointed to the symbols etched faintly along the outer edge, more like scars than carvings. There were 7 glyphs. Each one flickered faintly, like stars seen through tears. He recognized them immediately. Each glyph is a forgotten city, he said. Ones erased from history. The ones the builders used as anchors. Layla's eyes widened. You mean the ones connected through the compass? Darek nodded. Yes. They weren't destroyed by war. They were sacrificed to hold this door closed. Suddenly, a drop of liquid slid down the surface of the door. Thick. Dark. Red. Rafi recoiled. That's blood. It's memory, Layla corrected, staring at it. But it's clotting. Breaking down. Darek turned to them, his face set. The Pharaoh said the seal was weakening. This is it. This is the final lock. If it breaks, whatever's behind here doesn't just escape. It remembers itself. He lifted the compass. The door shuddered. 7 beams of light burst from the glyphs, circling Darek like haloed blades. One by one, the beams touched him. And with each, a memory exploded behind his eyes. 1. A child drawing in sand while a masked priest screams at the sky. 2. A city torn in two by silence itself, no screams, just absence. 3. A scribe writing on the walls of his own tomb, weeping words he cannot read. 4. A builder walking into a vault and never returning. 5. A woman cradling a serpent-shaped mask and whispering, "Please don't forget me." 6. A pharaoh on his throne, smiling at the gods, eyes burning with stars. 7. A man. Derek's father, carving a single word into stone, "Bury me with the eye." And then. Darkness. When Darek came to, the compass was embedded in the door. The beams of light had faded. The glyphs were gone. And the surface of the door was now cracked. Hairline fractures spread across it like lightning. The pulsing glow beneath had turned from green to gold. The kind of gold that doesn't shine. The kind that burns. "The door's going to open," Layla whispered. "No," Darek said. "It's going to bleed through." Rafi checked his gear. "So what do we do?" Darek didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, "We go through before it comes out." As if hearing him, the door split silently, 2 panels parting to reveal a corridor of pale flesh-colored stone, wet-looking, pulsing slightly. It smelled not of decay, but of remembrance, like old books soaked in blood. The floor was inscribed with thousands of tiny names. And above the threshold, "Memory is flesh. The forgotten is free." Layla's hand found Derek's. "Once we go in, we don't come out the same," he finished. And together, they stepped into the corridor. toward whatever the blind pharaoh had locked away. Chapter 10, The Mind Beneath the City. The corridor swallowed them whole. There was no floor. No ceiling. Only a sense of forward, defined by the slow pulse of unseen veins in the walls, faint golden light that throbbed like a heartbeat. The passage seemed to stretch and breathe, flexing with every step they took. It no longer felt like they were walking through architecture. They were inside a being. Layla paused suddenly. My hands, they're vibrating. Rafi blinked. I just saw my own shadow move before I did. Darek didn't respond. He was focused, the compass still pulsing in his hand, slower now, heavier. He could feel it pulling him deeper, responding not to coordinates, but to intention. This wasn't a map anymore. It was a ritual. And they were walking straight into its memory. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with what at first appeared to be statues, but they weren't stone. They were people. Hundreds of them, frozen mid-motion, scribes, priests, civilians, all with their hands raised, eyes sewn shut, mouths open in silent screams. Each was trapped in a crystal cocoon of semi-transparent mineral that reflected fragments of time. Layla leaned toward one, gasping. Darek, this is a priest from Seti's reign. He vanished during the cleansing of the Black Archives. Rafi touched another. This guy's modern, look at the radio on his belt. Darek looked around slowly, realization dawning. They're all dreamers. People who stepped too close to the eye. People who remembered things they weren't meant to. He stepped into the center of the chamber. They didn't die. They didn't live. They were absorbed. As they moved deeper, the compass began to spin, not wildly, but rhythmically. Purposefully. It wasn't lost. It was aligning. And then came the voice. You seek to bind what has already become truth. You walk inside the mind that outlived its body. You carry memory in your blood, and forgetting in your name. It wasn't the pharaoh. This voice was older. Colder. Not shaped by flesh, but carved from thought. At the heart of the inner sanctum was a sphere, levitating, silent, the size of a small house. Its surface was rippling, its skin made of countless written words crawling over one another. Languages long dead. Symbols long buried. Some still forming as they watched. It was the mind. The true essence of the blind pharaoh, everything he had seen, learned, remembered, contained here, pulsing like a dreaming star. Around it hovered fragments of memory, like moons. A child in a cradle, whispering the names of gods not yet born. Builders carving blueprints with their blood. A city opening its gates to something that did not walk. A lotus pendant split in two. Darek's father, standing in this very room, tears on his face. Darek himself, older, changed, seated on the black throne. Darek approached the sphere. It pulsed brighter, then dimmed, as if breathing him in. The compass flew from his hand and was absorbed into its surface. A slit opened in the sphere. A path. Layla gripped his arm. Darek, what happens if you step inside? He looked down at her hand, then at Rafi, who stood silently now, staring at one of the dreamers frozen in glass, a man who looked too much like someone he once knew. Darek spoke without looking back. I think this is the final test. Not what I remember. But what I'm willing to forget. He stepped through the slit. The mind closed around him. It was not dark. It was everything. He stood in a realm without shape, where time was a spiral and memory dripped like water from unseen heights. There, he met the pharaoh, not as corpse, not as echo. But as idea. You want to save your world? Then you must carry mine. Become the seal. Take the burden. Be the eye. Or walk away and let me finish what forgetting began. And then, a vision. A future where Ibisutek rose again, its memory infecting cities like a thought virus, collapsing reality under the weight of rewritten truth. A world reshaped by what should never have been remembered. And beside it, another path. Darek, bound to the mind, ageless, eternal, never leaving, but holding the line. Keeping the eyes shut. Forever. He opened his eyes. And whispered. Show me the way. Chapter 11, The Man Who Became the Eye. The moment Darek Amun whispered, "Show me the way," the light inside the sphere intensified, not blinding, but vast. Endless. The memory-threaded walls pulsed outward like a beating heart, and the slit he had entered sealed behind him. There was no sound. No weight. No breath. Only memory. It moved around him in luminous waves, flickering through infinite images, not in sequence, but all at once. The city of Ibisutek rebuilding itself in reverse. Builders laying down foundations backward. The stars rewinding. The blind pharaoh becoming again. And then the voice returned. Not in words, but in knowing. A consciousness that bled through the walls and bled into him. You seek to protect. To seal. To forget. But to bind me, you must be me. Darek felt the weight of it then, not just the offer, but the truth. He couldn't destroy the mind. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't evil. It was a memory too large for the world to hold. It had to live inside someone. He understood now what the builders tried and failed to do. They hadn't built the compass to locate the eye. They had built it to find someone strong enough to carry it. And the compass had chosen him. In the sanctum beyond the sphere, Layla and Rafi waited. The air grew still. Then, the mind pulsed once, deep and hollow. Rafi stepped forward. He's been in too long. Layla shook her head. No. Not too long. Just, long enough to decide. And then the mind opened. Darek stepped out. But he was changed. His eyes were no longer just brown, they shimmered with serpentine green and flickering gold, not glowing, but deep, like someone had lit a fire behind the surface of his gaze. A faint trail of symbols burned beneath his skin, faded, like tattoos remembered by the body instead of inked. Layla stepped back in awe. Darek. But when he looked at her, he smiled, tired, but clear. It's still me. She stepped forward. What did you do? He held up his hand. The compass had returned to his palm, but now it was fused to his skin, veins of gold threading into his wrist. I took the eye into me. I didn't destroy it. I gave it a place to rest. Rafi stared. You're carrying the pharaoh's mind. No. Not just his, Darek said. All of it. Every forgotten city. Every silenced truth. Every dream that was buried because it frightened the gods. Layla touched his hand gently. And how long can you carry it? Darek looked past her, toward the dreaming city. Until someone stronger comes. He turned back toward the corridor, the compass now pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. I know the way out now. The city won't resist me anymore. It sees me as its keeper. Rafi exhaled slowly. So we go. Darek nodded. We go. As they ascended through the city's veins, the dreamers trapped in crystal slowly turned toward him, just slightly, as if recognizing a new warden. The statues didn't move. But their shadows bowed. And above them, the surface began to tremble, not collapse, but rearrange, shifting sand and stone to hide the path they had taken, just as the builders once did. Ibisutek wasn't dying. It was settling back into dream. They emerged at dusk. The sea of stillness now stirred faintly, as if exhaling. The dunes rippled once, then calmed. The entrance was gone. Erased. Darek stood, his eyes scanning the horizon. Layla touched his shoulder. You left part of yourself down there, didn't you? No, he said quietly. I brought part of it up here. That night, as the three of them camped under stars that looked a little too bright, Darek walked away from the firelight and stared into a small bronze mirror. At first, he saw only his reflection. Then, the faint outline of another face behind his. Eyes bandaged. A smile like stone. We are watching together now. And Darek didn't flinch. He just nodded once. And whispered back. I remember. Chapter 12, The Whisper of the Builders. The days that followed their return from Ibisotek passed in strange silence. Not the peaceful kind. The expectant kind, like the world was holding its breath. Darek Amun no longer dreamed the way normal men did. When he closed his eyes, he didn't rest. He remembered. Not just his own life, but dozens, hundreds, of others. Memories not chosen. Memories inherited. He walked the halls of ancient temples at night while his body remained still. He watched the first stones of forbidden cities being laid beneath red moons. He stood behind the eyes of men who had carved words into walls they would never see again. And always, always, he heard the same voice in the background. Do not forget the builders. Back in Purbastet, Darek sat in the rear room of an antiquarian bookshop run by an old smuggler-turned-scholar named Yuba, flipping through a series of damaged scrolls he hadn't read in years. Each one now glowed faintly in his hands. Not visibly, but inside his mind, as if the glyphs remembered what they once meant. Those aren't magical texts, Yuba said from the corner, watching him over a bowl of figs. Just old temple inventories. Records. Not anymore, Darek replied. The language is layered. There's another text beneath the ink. The builders hid their knowledge in double meanings. He ran a fingertip across one line. The surface glyph read, deliver 10 statues to the High Court. But beneath that, in spectral text only Darek could now perceive, was the truth. 10 dreamers lost to the vault. One returned, unseeing, but remembering. Layla entered the room, holding a clay tablet with a piece of charcoal, her expression tense. We picked up movement in the red waste, she said. 3 riders. Hooded. Markings matched the Brotherhood. Rafi followed behind. They're not looking for you. They're looking for the eye. They think you left it behind. Darek closed the scroll slowly. They're half right. That night, as he stood alone on a rooftop overlooking the dark city, the stars shimmered more brightly than usual. Not in beauty, but in alignment. One of the constellations, Orion's belt, flickered in his vision, shifting, refracting. The stars didn't move. His understanding of them did. And then, a voice. Not the Pharaoh. Not the compass. But them. We are the ones who shaped the world beneath the world. We are the whisper between bricks, the silence between words. You are not the first. But you may be the last. A symbol burned behind his eyes, 3 serpents entwined around a lotus blossom. The builder's crest. And suddenly, he knew what they had left behind. Another vault. Not beneath sand, but beneath stone. A city. Luxor. The next morning, Darek gathered Layla and Rafi outside the bookshop. There's another site, he said. It's not marked on any compass, not even this one. He tapped the talisman fused to his wrist. It's marked in memory. Their memory. Whose? Rafi asked. Darek looked out over the rooftops of Purbastet, toward the southern horizon. The ones who tried to build truth itself, and got buried for it. The builders of the second vault. They rode that night, beneath a new moon. The compass pulsed with quiet purpose. And behind them, far from the flickering fires of Purbastet, 3 Brotherhood riders watched in silence, their tattoos marked with a new glyph, an eye split open in bleeding sand. They knew where he was going. And they intended to get there first. Chapter 13, The Vault Beneath Luxor. Luxor was alive with the buzz of heat, tourists, and centuries-old grandeur, but none of them saw what Darek Amun saw now. Beneath the temples and tombs, below the carefully curated ruins and museum exhibits, something else waited, not just older, but deliberately forgotten. The vault. Not marked on any map. Not described in any text. But Darek didn't need either anymore. He had the memory. Dressed as a low-tier preservationist, Darek moved through the temple complex with Layla at his side, Rafi trailing 2 paces behind. They moved like they belonged, and in a way, they did. The builders had used Luxor not as a monument, but as a mask. The famous temples above ground were not the main attraction. They were the covering. Darek stopped in the shadow of a crumbled pylon wall. "Here," he whispered. Rafi frowned. "That's a block of stone." Darek ran his palm across the smooth limestone. "No. It's a door." He tapped the surface 3 times in a rhythm that didn't come from his mind, but from the compass fused to his wrist. The stone responded. With a low, breathy groan, it shifted, sliding inward a few centimeters before grinding to the side, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into complete darkness. They entered without hesitation. The stairs were steep, the walls close. The smell of dust and trapped air hung heavy, but beneath it was something else. Familiarity. "The builders were here," Layla whispered. "They walked this very stair." "More than walked," Darek replied. "They sealed something here. Something different from the eye." Rafi grunted. "Different as in smaller?" Darek shook his head. "As in, conscious." The stair ended in a hall unlike any they'd seen. The walls were not stone but layered memory tiles, each one pulsing faintly with encoded light. They curved inward, forming a perfect circle, as if the room itself had been constructed to focus energy inward like a lens. At the center stood a monolith, black, metallic, veined with shifting lines of gold. Not etched. Alive. It hummed. Darek stepped closer, the compass reacting instantly, shedding a pale blue glow. The monolith responded, and from its smooth surface rose an image, projected not by light, but by thought. A figure in builder robes. Hooded. Timeless. It spoke, not in sound, but in deep memory. "To the one who carries the eye, you now carry the burden we once feared. We built this vault not to contain, but to explain. Memory is a structure. History is a choice. You now must choose what the world forgets." The monolith shifted again, revealing a second surface, etched with the builder's crest, the intertwined serpents and lotus blossom Darek had seen in his vision. Below it was an indentation. A space. Waiting. For the compass, Layla breathed. Darek hesitated. "If I put it in there, I don't think I get it back." Rafi crossed his arms. "You sure we want to know what they didn't want the gods to remember?" Darek looked at the monolith. "No. But we need to." He pressed his palm, compass and all, into the indentation. The vault reacted violently. The walls pulsed. The air became thick with soundless vibration. Images exploded outward, not projected, but felt. Cities built underground, not for hiding, but for observation. Builders harvesting not power, but memory, extracted from dying stars. A rift between the gods and the builders, not of worship, but of witnessing. The blind pharaoh was not cursed for blasphemy. He was punished for seeing too much. And Darek finally understood. The eye wasn't the only mind ever sealed. There were others. Older. Sleeping. One of them, beneath Luxor. As the vision faded, the monolith began to tremble. Cracks formed in its surface. From deep below the vault, a rumble echoed upward. Layla stepped back. What did you just wake up? Derek's eyes glowed faintly now, green and gold spiraling. I didn't wake it. I just told it. I remember. Chapter 14, The Vault That Should Not Have Opened. The tremor passed like a breath through the bones of the earth. The monolith at the center of the builder's vault cracked open, not explosively, but purposefully, as if it had been waiting for the correct memory to reawaken it. Thin seams of golden light formed a triangle on its surface, then receded inward, revealing a narrow spiral passage plunging straight down into blackness. No steps. Just a slope of polished stone slick with condensation that smelled like time, stale, metallic, and deep. Rafi peered down. That's not a stairway. That's a throat. Layla nodded. And we're being swallowed. Darek said nothing. His hand rested on the compass fused to his wrist, its pulse perfectly matching the slow rhythm echoing from below. He could feel it, not just a vibration, but a presence, rising like a thought remembered against your will. This vault was not meant to be opened by hands. Only by memory. Ropes anchored, gear secured, the three lowered themselves into the darkness. As they slid deeper, the light from above was swallowed completely. Their lanterns flickered unnaturally, casting shadows that moved before they did. Derek's eyes adjusted quickly now. Too quickly. He didn't see just with light anymore. The eye in his blood saw shapes imprinted in memory, not matter. And what he saw chilled him. The walls aren't built, he whispered. They're grown. Veins of crystalline metal crisscrossed organic-looking stone, pulsing faintly with an inner current, like neural pathways. The vault was not just sealed. It was alive. After nearly 50 meters, they reached a landing. The floor beneath them was warm, humming faintly. The walls curved around them, no corners, no joints, no seams. Like the inside of a skull shaped by intention rather than biology. And ahead, a vast chamber filled with a cold, blue light. But there were no torches, no crystals. The light was memory. Projected from a swirling column in the center of the room, a vertical storm of fragments, faces, objects, names, all turning in a slow cyclone. It hovered over a pedestal of bone-white stone, covered in builder glyphs that shimmered as they approached. Layla whispered, "It's a core. Like a mind anchor." Rafi edged closer. "What's it anchoring?" Darek stared into the cyclone. Something that never wanted to be remembered. As they drew closer, the swirling fragments began to respond, tightening into coherent images. A group of builders chanting in a low, harmonic drone, standing in a circle of cracked mirrors. A child, no older than 7, seated inside a stone cage carved with names not spoken aloud. A vault door screaming as it sealed itself shut from the inside. And a phrase, repeated across languages and ages. The dreamer who woke too early. The pedestal flared as Darek approached. The compass burned against his wrist. And the cyclone collapsed into a beam of light that struck his forehead. He staggered. And fell into the memory. He stood in a temple. Not Egyptian. Not builder. Something older. The architecture shifted as he moved, adjusting to his perception. And there, on a raised slab, lay a figure, female, ageless, her eyes bandaged in lotus silk. The builders whispered her name only once. Asarata. The first witness. The original carrier of memory. The one who dreamed the blind pharaoh into existence. She was not a queen. Not a priestess. She was a vault. And she had seen too much. When her dream became too loud, the builders carved her into silence. Not death. Not sleep. Containment. Darek gasped as he was pulled back. He was on his knees in the vault again, sweating, hands shaking. The compass flickered dimly now, like it had spent too much to hold the vision. Rafi and Layla knelt beside him. "What did you see?" Layla asked. "Not the eye," Darek whispered. "Not the pharaoh." He looked up at the pedestal. She came before them. The dreamer. The first mind ever sealed. The one who taught the builders that some thoughts must never be thought alone. The pedestal glowed again. The room shifted. A new corridor opened. Downward. Cold air swept through the chamber, heavy with ancient breath. And from somewhere deep within, a voice whispered. "You remember me now. Now remember what I became."
Every story has an ending, but some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.